Hey, what's up, guys? We out here. My name is Maylee Tao, the host of Short and Sweet, a Donut Princess podcast. And today we are going to be discussing some things that you might not really think about when you have a small business. For me, I had a small business with my family, born and raised in a bakery, really worked at the bakery and, never really thought that we would ever sell the business. Therefore, not even really thinking about some of the methods and some of the things that we'll be discussing today with our guest, Jessica. Thank you, Jessica, for coming on to the podcast. And I can't wait to share your expertise with my listeners. How's it
Awesome.
going today?
It's going great. I'm so glad to be here. Thanks for having me on the show. I'm excited about our conversation and connecting with your audience.
Yeah, I just love highlighting badass women on our podcast. And so before we begin about what you do for a living, tell us a little bit about you and how you got into business.
Yeah, I never thought I'd be an entrepreneur, honestly. So I grew up in New Jersey. My grandparents were entrepreneurs and my dad saw like the up and down of small business owner life. And,
Mhm.
some weeks were great and some weeks were terrible. So he decided that entrepreneurship was not his gig and he went into education. So I was raised like, go get a good job, work for a corporate company, get this 401k. And that's what I did.
Mhm.
So I pursued a career in sports management, sports entertainment right out of college,
Mhm.
worked in corporate. I think I survived like 5 years, maybe 4 or 5 years.
Time.
It was a long time. And then the recession hit. And at
Yeah.
that point, I really had a choice to make. And it was a realization for me that this anthem that I had been taught my whole life that corporate careers were safe, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Was really not the case because
Right.
some guy in New York sitting in a big tower was just looking at a budget and just like crossed my name off of a list and that was what happened. So that was my realization is that I'm not safe in this corporate world and the only way I am safe and can control my future is to start my own business. So upsetting my father, I went out and did the whole generation before me and followed in my grandfather's footsteps of starting my first business and that was back in 2009.
That's so funny that you share that because my parents, when they ever heard me, when you're a little girl, and they're like, what do you want to be when you grow up? My parents were like, you're going into business. Like, you're going to avoid all government jobs. You're going to avoid all corporate stuff. You're going to own your own business. And that's that. And it just goes to show how much influence our family and our local community have on the initial path when we leave from high school to college and on. And I wanted to thank you for sharing that because it's so interesting. You're like, okay, yeah, I'll follow this corporate, journey that you are suggesting. But once you're in this corporate journey, and I've never really got to experience that because I just jumped straight into entrepreneurship. But my friends, with the pandemic happening and no one is safe, literally
Yeah.
they like you said, somebody looks at a budget and they go, "Actually, we don't have enough money to pay for this person anymore. Cut." And I've seen it happen over and over, especially with the pandemic happening.
Right.
Um, and it's just a reality that I feel like maybe back then in our parents' generation, it was more stable and less risky. But I think in today's day and age, being your own entrepreneur is one of the most powerful moves that you can make for your life.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I agree with you. I think it was more stable. Like if we think about it, the careers were more stable. People didn't move around careers as much like you would stay with
Mhm.
a company for your entire career. And that's just not reality anymore.
Yeah.
And I think that the pandemic really was called like the Great Awakening. There's been so many
Yeah.
people that have jumped out of corporate careers or traditional careers to do entrepreneurship or the gig economy. And I think everybody's been awakened to that reality.
Yeah, and it just also goes to show how much technology and how our world has really changed from the past generation and that we constantly have to keep up with what's changing. So tell us a little bit about your first business and how did it go?
Yeah. So my first business, my now husband and I started it together. We were engaged at the time, and we just knew we knew we wanted to start a company, but we had no idea what we were going to do.
Mm.
So we looked around, and we had a couple of successful friends that were living in Aspen, Colorado, and they had this
Mhm.
cute boutique wine store. And we're like, okay, cool. We'll do wine. Um, so we said, hey, and basically, this is like a condensed version of the conversation. Hey,
Mhm.
do you mind if we rip off your idea and go open it in Florida? And they're like, yeah, cool, whatever, go ahead, steal away. So that's what we did. We didn't put a whole lot of thought into it. We chose Florida because my in laws had a house there they weren't using. So
Mhm.
free house, free car during a recession, starting a business sounded pretty good.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
yeah, we just ventured into the wine space. We had no idea what we were doing. And we kind of just learned was learning as we were going along, but we ended up building a pretty successful brand in the luxury space, so premium
Okay.
wines and dealing with collectors all over the world. And it was really a crazy ride, but it was one of those examples of building a business during a recession or depression. We hear sometimes that's like the best time to build a
Mhm.
business,
Mhm.
and we were examples of that, and we really took advantage of what that opportunity was for us, and it was fun. It was really fun.
Now, when you say that this wine business, was this more of like a new age type of subscription-based model that we've been seeing a lot of? Or what type of business model are we talking about with
Yeah.
wine?
Yeah, no, so going back to 2009, there wasn't that even wasn't even on the radar yet, right?
Right, right.
So we started as just a regular retail store and tasting bar, which was like the new innovative concept at the time.
Yeah.
And we were one of the first ones to go online. So I've heard you mention Gary Vee in some of your episodes before, but Gary Vee started the wine industry. He was one of the
Yes.
first to go online.
Mhm.
So we took that model, but we specialized in the luxury space with wine
Okay.
collectors. So at the time there was this community, like forums basically, where wine collectors would share, hey, I could find this specialized French wine at this little shop in Naples where we were at.
Mhm.
And then you were able to post like your whole inventory on it. It was called Wine Searcher.
Nice. Okay.
So yeah, so that's where we branched off into. That was like our innovation is like, all right, now we're just not going traditional retail, but we're going to put all of our luxury collectibles online and get involved in this. It was almost like a trading market of
Yeah.
collectors all over the world.
And you're getting a lot of these enthusiasts who are like really passionate about wine. So you got people who are like the collectors, and you've got people who are like very, very specialized about that specific type of wine.
Exactly. Yeah.
Super cool. And
Yeah.
did you guys end up selling that business eventually?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So we did not get into it as like a passion. Like I said, there wasn't a lot of thought into it. It just seemed like it would be fun at the time. We were 24 when we started the company.
Yeah.
So, and like I also mentioned, Gary Vee was blowing up the wine industry and all of the retailers started following online. So
Okay.
we knew we had a short horizon where we
Mhm.
were going to have a lot of competition. So about three years, just under 3 years into that business, we decided it was the right time to sell,
Okay.
and we listed the business for sale. We were able, fortunately, to sell it within like 60 days, and
Great.
great transaction. But
Amazing.
before that whole thing blew up, where now there's every wine inventory is online, Total Wine sells online, there's subscription models. Like now it's a completely different ball
It's
game now.
super saturated now.
Super saturated.
Super
Yeah.
saturated.
Yeah.
So, in that process of you selling your business, did you learn some things that now you look back on, you're like, wait, we could have done this differently? Like, how did you know how to successfully sell your business in that way? Like, does your husband know about it? Did you guys do research?
So we did not know anything. And I think it was one of those things is, we figured out the wine business as we went along. It was the same thing. Look, we always had the intention of selling the business. I mean, I said we started the company at 24. Like I was
Yeah.
never going to sell wine at decanted for the rest of my life. I knew that,
Yes.
right? But I didn't know how to structure and prepare the company for sale. So there's a lot of things we did wrong.
Mhm.
Probably a lot more than what we actually did right. I do think probably the brands that we had built and the vendors we'd represented that carried our sale through. That's really what got the
Yes.
deal done.
Mhm.
But outside of that, we were very, very lucky to be
Yeah.
able to sell our business and be able to sell it so quickly and for what we sold it for.
Yeah, I mean, when we look at the statistics of businesses, usually it takes about 5 years, like a 5-year lifespan, right? That's where you know like your business is make or break. But at the point that you were selling it at 3 years, it was already super successful and you guys were just kind of ready to move on. I am loving this conversation and I'm not only getting to talk to a fellow female who has amazing business experience, but really getting to revisit that your very first business, which I know a lot of people who want to be entrepreneurs. They're scared to do this, and rightfully so. Business can be pretty scary, especially when you're dealing with contracts, you're dealing with the time and the ingredients, and you have just so many different factors to really fix this puzzle. But my burning question for you is when you establish the branding part, which what I consider is like a luxury brand that really attracted a lot of the community members to the wine product, how are you able to structure letting go of that brand that you had built and in hopes of this new owner carrying that brand the way that you have for those 3 years?
Yeah, that was really hard. And I think that's one of the big mistakes that I made and that
Mhm.
I see a lot of business owners make is that that brand became us. That brand became my
Yes.
husband and I.
Yes.
And I emotionally struggled through that process. Now, look, like I was done with the business. I was burnt out. Like I was absolutely ready to sell, but
Yeah.
I was still really emotionally invested in how that transition took place. And looking back, like the transition took place fine, but they took the brand a different direction than I wanted it to
Yes.
go.
Mhm. Mhm.
So I'm going back to Naples in December for the first time in 10 years because I didn't want to go back knowing what the direction they took the brand. And
Yeah.
they closed a couple years ago,
Okay.
but I just couldn't go back and face that because it
Right.
was so emotionally tied to me. And I took it very personally, which I had a hard time separating. Like there's like my identity and there was my
Mhm.
role as a
Mhm.
founder of Decanted, and they're totally separate. But at that time for me, they were intertwined.
I think that's actually what I've been going through this year is that my parents, we had this amazing bakery for 40 years in our family. I, after college, stepped right back in and rebranded it, really took on the branding hat and the founder hat and the co-owner hat, made it my life. And I know you know what that's like. You just that becomes your identity. I'm literally the donut princess because of this whole thing.
Yeah.
And when we sold the bakery, and when I had to let go of, again, these key identity factors of what makes me a business owner, but what makes me Maylee,
Hmm.
it was a big emotional struggle and a bittersweetness to it. On one hand, like you said, you're burnt out, you're ready to let it go. But then once it's gone, you're like, wait a minute. I hope it goes still in the trajectory that I hope that it would go. But the thing is, there's nothing in the contract that says that anybody can really be the brand. Like you are the brand for a reason. You and your husband became the
Hmm.
brand for a reason and people gravitated towards that.
Right.
And I, as Donut Princess, do things a certain way. And that's why people gravitate towards that energy of the business. And, it's awesome that I'm having this conversation because I had never really talked to somebody who was so passionate about that brand that they had built and then just sold it and like could feel like no remorse. But you do have this attachment to it. Like being a business owner means like that is like your whole life, like from the moment you wake up to the
Yeah.
moment you sleep. It's all about your business.
Yeah. I mean, look, I released a book in April and the metaphor I use is that your business is a baby. And
Yeah.
I joke about it, but it is. I mean, it does become a member of your family. And we went through this and I see a lot of people go through this, but there is a period of like grief. Like I won't call it mourning, because it
Right.
is a celebration too, right?
Mhm.
But there is a period of grief of letting go after your business is sold. Um, like looking back, the one thing that we did, one of the things we did really right is that we had a plan. It wasn't a
Mhm.
plan to go start a new business, but we were going off on a 6 month road trip across the country with our dog. So like we had
Yeah.
something we were running towards and
Mhm.
focusing on to take our focus away from the grief, or help us
Yeah.
like process it a little bit. But that's, I mean, it's super common, right? It is. It's an extension
Yeah.
of us. It's part of the family. I mean, We spend more time with our businesses sometimes than we do with our spouses, our kids, our parents, right? I mean, you
Yeah.
were all that was all in one, right? Because you were
Everything.
raised in the bakery. You like your
Yeah.
whole family, your brother, your parents, like everyone, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, when we're talking about exiting a business, it's again, it's not just the paperwork, it's not just the monetary stuff and the plan. It's also this emotional attachment, which I don't know if it's also, did your husband go through something similar? Was it more of like you and him together were going through this little grief period?
Yeah, he actually took it worse.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, he took it worse
Oh,
because look, the other thing we struggled with, and I see some people struggle with too, is the sense of purpose that's over
yes.
from the day, like the day you sold. So like the day before you sell, you're responsible for everything. You're
Hmm.
accountable for everything.
Hmm.
Everybody depends on you for this entity to keep running. And then the next day, you, there's nobody needs you, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, like, yeah, they need you for the transition and training period, right? But in
Yes.
the short future, you're not needed anymore. And so what saw him struggle with is purpose in life. Like,
Yeah.
we were 28, I think, at the time when we sold. And, here's this 28-year-old guy who's super successful, entering the prime of his career, and he's got nothing to do, right?
Yeah.
So he took it a lot harder than I did. I was so burnt out. I was like, yeah, let's just go road trip for a while. Like, I don't care. Like, I can listen to some
Right.
Bruce Springsteen on the radio and tune it out. But it took him a while to recover from that.
I'm glad though that you guys both had each other to kind of keep each other company. Again, I feel like entrepreneurship can be a very, very lonely road.
Yeah.
And when couples do it together, like my partner and I have some businesses, it's great because we can always just rely on each other even in the most exciting times or even in the most emotional times. And I'm glad that you ended up taking that 6-month road trip. So tell us a little bit about what happened after that. So you've sold the company, you guys have gone on this amazing road trip and lived a life, which is something I urge everybody that they should do is
Yeah.
take some time for yourself to just go out into the world. So what happened next?
So while we were traveling, we were talking about lots of different business ideas, like what we're going to do next. We came back,
Hmm.
circled back, and we were moving to Colorado, back to Colorado at the time,
Okay.
and we're like, well, maybe we'll open another wine store. We're like, no, we're not going to do that. And
There's always that temptation, by the way.
I know, right? It's like, well, I already know how to do
Always.
this, right?
Yeah.
So we started talking about our exit process and
Mhm.
how we were super lucky. I said we had a good transaction, but our broker was pretty bad,
Okay.
just like
Yeah.
not a great guy.
Yeah.
And so we're talking about it. One of my mentors in the wine industry told me that if you can ever find a business that you can just be 1% better than the competition and crush it, like that's where you'll make your gold. And so I was
Absolutely.
sitting there thinking about the process we went through. And when we were trying to go sell, a lot of our advisors were like, no one's going to buy your business. It's too small. And, here we are like doing, I think we are almost at 4 million annual revenue at the time. Like we're small, but we were not that small. Right. And
Right.
so we were discouraged the whole step of the way. Like I said, our broker just wasn't a good guy. He treated us like we
Yeah.
were too small, like we were a pain to deal with.
Oh.
And I said, what if we could just work with small businesses, getting them ready to sell and getting them through the sale process? Like, what if business brokerage and M&A for small businesses is our next venture? And so we toyed with that for a while. And when
Mhm.
we landed in Denver, and this is where like I feel like fate enters sometimes, right?
Yes. Yes.
But there was a business brokerage office that was kind of defunct and it was up for resale,
Mhm.
right in the heart of Denver.
Okay.
And it was just like the perfect fit. We just started investigating it and we're like, things are lining up for a reason. So I think within probably 90 days of deciding that was our path, we had bought that business.
That's awesome. And you guys just went for it. Would you say that there was any kind of formal training that you had gotten to kind of certify you to guide people through this process? I mean, even just going through the process yourself can be enough. But yeah, was there any additional like education that you took on to make sure you could guide your clients in that direction?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we did decide to join a franchise organization because
Okay.
we saw in our industry the training and the learning was going to be really important, and
Yes.
also the connections. So like when we bring a business to market to sell, it's really important that we have hundreds and thousands of buyers that are interested. And
Mhm.
joining a franchise immediately got us that kind of network and database.
That's
So
very true.
we've got training through them. We had amazing mentors too that were part of the organization, was one of the reasons that we joined. But we did go through some formal training too. So we got what's called our certified business intermediary, a
Mhm.
CBI. It's an extended accreditation of selling businesses, small businesses to mid-sized businesses. And then we still to this day participate in continuing education every single year because it changes, right?
Yeah.
Everything changes in the economy, and that affects small businesses every year. So
Tell me about your first client that you got, and, if you could see yourself in this client or if they were dealing with a whole new set of problems because it was more of like a franchise business.
yeah, I don't remember my first exact client, but I remember my first client that I really,
Yeah.
really gelled with and really cared about. Not that I don't care about all of them, but this gentleman and I really got along, and
Mhm.
I like his business became mine. So it was in the doggy daycare industry. So
Mhm.
when I first started in business, I was in business brokerage. I was known as like the doggy daycare go-to. That was all my clients, was doggy daycares, dog grooming, things like that. I'm actually working with a client now that she bought our business from us back in like 2014. So it's pretty cool
Okay.
to see some of this come full circle.
Yeah.
So this gentleman, he was older. He worked for the National Park Service. Originally was his first career. And then when
Cute.
he, yeah, I know. And then when he retired, he bought this doggy daycare and dog walking business. And so it was a
Mhm.
small doggy daycare. And then he ran the dog walking side himself. So he would literally like go pick up all the dogs in the morning. He would walk them all, then do a second shift. I mean, he walked something ridiculous like 25 miles a day. He was in like,
Whoa.
I know, best shape of his life.
Yeah.
And it was a similar thing. I think why I really appreciated him is that he had built a brand that was built really on service and
Mhm.
caring about his clients, caring about the
Yeah.
dogs, right? Like they were
Yeah.
clients.
Yeah.
And so we went through a number of different buyers and we couldn't find the right fit, meaning the right person that we felt was going to carry on the legacy of what he'd built in terms of his reputation.
Mhm.
So we declined a couple offers. We went through due diligence with another offer and decided it wasn't the right fit. And finally, about a year in, we found the right person to take that business over.
Mhm.
And that owner still runs that business today. So
Great. And I love this whole extra factor of for you guys doing extra due diligence to make sure that this person taking over will absolutely make sure that yeah, his legacy will still be known. Like they're still going to get similar if not better service and the fundamentals of that business of why people go there. I think that you guys are kind of like in a way like a protector and broker of the whole process as well as making the seller feel really comfortable because as we just explored before selling a business can come from a multitude of reasons. Sometimes there's tragic reasons, sometimes it's like disagreements within the family or whatever it may be that they have to end up selling it, and for there to be anything that really exists like yourself to guide them through this, I think that's like you definitely saw a need for that just going through the experience yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. And we try and focus on it. We ask our clients what's most important to you. We call it the most important outcome. And for some clients, it is legacy. It's like, how is this brand going to
Mhm.
continue on? Some clients, it's money, which that's totally fine too. Is like, I want to just sell for the highest purchase price. Cool.
Yeah.
Right. But that's, both of those are very different strategies of finding a buyer and getting a deal done. So we try and keep that most important outcome in mind for
Yeah.
everybody.
Yeah, and I mean, could you share kind of like a really negative experience that you've had in this part of the sector of your business of work?
Yeah. Like something that didn't turn out well, maybe for the
Yes.
seller.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have unfortunately we have like a lot of situations where businesses don't sell.
Mhm.
And there's for a lot of different reasons. Mainly it boils down to expectations of a seller, right?
Mhm.
So we had and you mentioned sometimes there's tragic
Mhm.
situations. So we had a family business a few years ago and the business owner was older and like knew he wanted to exit at some point but hadn't
Yeah.
done any preparation work. The books and records were a mess
Yeah.
and his daughter died in a tragic car accident.
Mm. I'm
which sent
sorry.
him into like a total downward spiral, like could
Yeah.
not go to work, could not do anything related to the business. And the business just kind of landed in his wife's lap, who had never worked a day in the business. So she was kind of picking up the pieces. We were trying to get it back on the market. And then his grief overtook him too. And unfortunately, he passed away a few months later.
Mm,
So, I mean, this is like the worst one. It like always breaks my heart. I don't tell this story that often. And then so at that point there was just nothing left to do, right? So now this poor woman's lost her daughter and her husband in a matter of 6 months, and she has to close up the family business too, and loses her livelihood as well. I think that's the most extreme of like awfulness that could happen in a series
yeah.
of events, and I hope no one else that never happens to anyone else. But yeah, that's the kind of the implications if you're not thinking about the sale in the future and
Yeah.
really getting it or getting the business organized so it is sellable in case something happens to you, right?
Right. Yeah. And like, I can definitely share a little bit about that too. I think that's a completely tragic and it's really sad. But going back to how important businesses are for the family, and again, it's like a child, it's like a member of your family. Like, you are totally making sure that it's okay. And when it's not okay, that's also where your physical and mental stress go because you're trying to pick these pieces up. And why I feel like this specific story is important for people to like think about and listen to is our families. I'm a daughter of a refugee immigrant who came here, nothing, no education, picked up the donut business. And my mom also had other multiple businesses too, like either like 99 cent stuff or she had a Chinese food restaurant. I mean, immigrants will do anything to learn the business and get it going, and they can be so loyal and so dedicated to their business. I never thought my mom was ready to retire.
Right.
And a lot of people who are older will probably be kind of like my mom, where they're like, they keep working the business and they don't know when to think about prepping to let it go. And then you get into situations like these where it becomes a complete loss. There's just like also like a lack of education that they've had.
Yeah.
What would you say is really, really the most important things when you're getting ready for your business to sell? And what kind of like common myths that you can kind of break in this whole selling a business
Yeah.
concept?
Yeah. I think one of the things is the first thing is like just a mindset shift is that
Mhm.
every single one of us will exit our businesses. It's just
Yeah.
whether we're going to sell them and profit off that or we're going to have to close the doors. Like
Right.
really, and sell could be to a third party, a family member, whatever, but we all will exit, right?
Yeah.
So that's the mindset shift. And then spinning and changing your strategy of running your business like you're going to sell it any given day, which kind of ties into the first big myth. So one of the big things that we deal with in preparation for businesses to sell is people feel like they have to keep continuing to invest back in the business in order to grow
Mhm.
it without a focus on profitability. So, and you just went this through this, so you probably understand this, but a lot of business valuation and how businesses are valued and what they're worth depends on the profitability of the company.
Yes.
So if you continue to spend every dollar that you're making and not show a profit on your financial reports down the road, that business isn't going to be worth a whole lot. And
Mhm.
I think that's the biggest myth because there is so much education about starting a business, growing a business, and in that growth of a business, we hear a lot about like invest back into the growth and grow faster and grow faster. But there's so little education about how you eventually exit and how that's a totally different way of running a business because it's not yes, you have to grow, but the
Yes.
focus is on profit, not about how much your revenue is growing.
Just talking to an expert who is really an expert in guiding people through this whole enigma of like, what's it like to sell your business? And after I sold my business, I had multiple peers come up to me and were like, how did you do it? How did you frame it? And honestly, every business is different, especially with all the circumstances that come with it, especially if it's an individual business or if it's an online business or a family business. So I'm so grateful that you're here with me today where we get to talk about some things that really do matter. How would you say that small businesses, I guess, how many businesses have you worked with where they already had that end goal in mind when they started the business?
Very few for that
Yeah.
structured angle. Like I'd say of all the, we've been involved in over 600 business sales, and I'd say 95% of them did not know they were going to sell when they sold, right? They
Mhm.
might have had that thought of someday I'm going to sell. I hear that a lot. Like someday in the future, I plan on selling. But unfortunately, like our timelines get condensed a lot because
Yeah.
like we're talking about, and it doesn't always have to be some tragedy. It could just be burnout
Right.
or a different opportunity, but things in our lives change as business
Yeah.
owners, and that affects what the future of the business holds.
Yeah. Would you say that out of your experience of dealing with businesses who, 95% of them weren't prepared for it, like what are like the most important things to prepare for? And I definitely want to get into financials first. I know that's
Yeah. It's
kind
the
of
number
like
one.
the
Yeah.
number one thing.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about what it's like to have good financials, and at what point would you recommend a business to sell based on their financials?
Yeah. So financials are key in any business sale. It doesn't matter how small or how large your business is, they're going to ask for the financials. So when we talk about financial cleanliness, you're looking for profit and loss statements, balance sheets, tax returns, and bank statements that all really tie together, right? So it can tell the story of the business,
Mhm,
ideally for at least 3 years. If you've been in business shorter than that, then you can produce what you have. But for businesses that have been in business longer, at least 3 years, sometimes 5 years history. But there's other things that we're looking to and the buyers are looking at. They don't want to see too many personal or non-essential expenses run through the business. They want
mhm,
the expenses to be business related. They want timely financials too. So I find a lot of business owners, we get overwhelmed and we'll just rely on an accountant to prepare our books and records maybe once a quarter or once a year.
mhm,
And buyers and bankers, once you're going through this process, want to see monthly reconciled
mhm,
statements. So keys are profit and loss, balance sheet, tax returns, bank statements, all tied together, all in the business name, like not on your personal tax
mhm,
returns,
mhm.
like in business tax returns, keeping any personal or non-essential expenses out of the business, and then just keeping them updated on a monthly basis.
And then are there other things that they should prepare for? Earlier we talked about the branding aspect. Are there like what are some other elements that you would recommend a business to before they even start? Think
Yeah.
about this before before they started.
So the second big thing, and you hear this a lot in business coaching and consulting, is figuring out how to work yourself out of your job in your business.
Mhm.
So making sure the business isn't relying on you. So the day we start, the business is relying on us. We're
Yes.
everything. Yeah, we're like CEO, CMO, COO, chief janitor, like everything is us, right?
Yes.
And over time, you want to work yourself out of all those roles. And as you do, the business becomes more valuable. So, when we're starting new businesses, we have a number of businesses together. My husband and I, we're thinking from day one, how do we get ourselves to what we call in the brokerage community an owner absentee role as fast as
Yes.
possible,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
So that's a plan from day one, knowing that the first year, maybe first two, that's not possible, right?
Mhm.
But that is the end goal.
That's great advice. And I think like when people start their businesses or when they think about business owners, like I don't know where people get these weird ideas from, or if maybe it's like an attachment to the business. But, for example, my mom was very attached to the business. She couldn't really let go and she would always show up and, rightfully so. I understand because it's her responsibility. If someone doesn't
Right.
show up for work, she's got to be there. She knows everything. And even teaching some people, she's still there. It's just like this kind of like pull and tug of this care that you have for a business as a business owner, and looking at it though from a bird's eye view, from the exit factors point of view, right? Like you want to be actually absent from your business so that when you do sell it, they're not constantly like, "Oh, well, we don't know what it is because, we need to have you specifically."
Yeah. Yeah, and if you think about it, even before you exit, that's how we get freedom from our businesses, right? That's how
Mhm.
we're able to take, a 3-week no phone vacation, is that we have other people doing things in our business. But But it's not uncommon, and, to hear stories like your mom, and especially I think people that have been in the business for a very long time, built it from scratch. There is, like, going back to that emotional attachment we talked about, and
Yeah.
viewing your role as your identity. That's very hard. And that's probably the hardest part of this whole preparation process. Like,
Yeah.
everything else is very tactical, sometimes a little strategic, but switching how you emotionally attach to something or your mindset around it, that's the hardest part to overcome.
Yeah, and I think also another aspect to think is like, is this business impacting me to a point of really putting in jeopardy your physical health, your mental health, like the whole burnout thing that we talk about. It's a very, very real thing. And because we're so emotionally attached to it, it's I think the emotions even run higher in that state of mind because you're just like, I'm responsible for this, but I need to make sure this is. Tell us about Exit Factor and the mastermind that you have going on, and how, like, what's your target audience for that, so that, if somebody's listening out there and they think that that's something that applies to them, like, just know that this resource is available.
Yeah. Yeah. So I started Exit Factor to help people prepare their business for sale in the future, whether that's 3, 5, or 10 years down the road. Because, like I said, running a business like you're going to sell it is a much different way of running a business than we've traditionally been taught. So at
Yes.
Exit Factor, we start by identifying what the business is worth today,
Hmm.
what the opportunity for value is in the future, and the gaps that we need to solve to get from today to that point in time. And we move through that process through some one-to-one consulting, and some mastermind online programs and resources, just with the goal getting people prepared to sell so they're able to sell. There's this really scary stat that only about 13% of all US small businesses are able to sell. The
Mm.
rest of the 87% go out of business.
Wow.
So first and foremost, I want to position people so they are able to sell, and then
Yes.
obviously get them more time, money, and freedom, not just in the sale, but today for themselves while they're going through the program.
I think that I've never even heard of a program like that existing out there, and hearing from a business owner, it's, if you don't know, talk to somebody and consult Jessica and the exit factors, so and so you're educated on the money that you could be leaving on behind on the table, the terms that you could be leaving behind, and it's just good to have that little angel on your shoulder to tell you where to go, and that advisor to tell you, hey, I've seen thousands of businesses in my past, and let me share what I've learned. So before we end our podcast, though, I want to get into the 5 golden nuggets that I love sharing
Yep.
with my viewers. And this one, I'm going to actually toss it up to you. So, what are 5 things that you think small business owners should know about the selling process that they might not already know?
Okay. So we'll talk about a few ones we haven't covered. So, number one, there's a myth that your business is too small. And I told my story, but no business is too small to sell. You can
Mhm,
sell businesses for as little as $15,000 a year, all the way up into the billions that we see. So that'd be my first golden nugget.
mhm,
My second golden nugget is that you are going to sell faster than you think you are. So we talked a little bit about that, but really thinking about your timeline and then thinking about how can you pull this off in half that time, because that
mhm.
that might be really what's going to happen.
More realistic.
More realistic.
Mhm,
The third one is, so buyers, everybody thinks that a private equity firm or their competitor is going to buy their business.
mhm.
The truth is that about 80% of all business buyers are people that are first time entrepreneurs. So they're coming out of school or corporate, and
Yeah.
that's who's buying your business, which is really invigorating because they're going to be just as passionate about you as you are about running your business.
Mhm.
Fourth little golden nugget is, don't tell anybody that you're selling when you're thinking about selling. Confidentiality is super key. It's a
Yeah.
long process. It's a long road. Don't involve your staff, protect them from that process, and
Mhm.
also protect your business from that. So
Great.
yeah. And then the last one, I'll come back to kind of my story in the beginning and what we were talking about with the grief and the transition,
Mhm,
is that it's much better to have something to run to after you sell your business than
mhm,
running from your business. So when you are in the sale process, find something that excites you about the day after, something you can focus on, because you are going to have that transition period, and something that'll make you smile is going to help you through that transition.
Amazing information, amazing advice. Jessica, thank you for so much for taking the time out of your day to just hang out and give us a scoop in the 411. Is there anything else that you want to share with potential business owners or anybody in the business sector?
No, I just, look, all of you are my people. I give you huge kudos from having the courage to start a business. Like, it takes a lot of courage, a lot of bravery to start one. I know it takes a warrior mentality to sell one. So I'm here if you ever need any help.
Perfect. And how can people find you?
Yeah. So we have a page on our website. If you go to exitfactor.com/podcast, it has all my social media links, a contact us form. It also has a link to our mastermind and everything. And we've got a special offer for your listeners too.
Yeah. So our special offer is you're going to use the promo code Donut Princess. This code will be good through next year,
Mhm.
and you're going to get 25% off of her mastermind program. So thank you so much for your generous code that you're going to give for any business owners who are listening right now, or even if you're just starting off your business. This is really, really important to have that plan, not only when you start your business, but when you exit it. Thank you for your time today, Jessica. And for those of you who are listening, holla at your girl.